spatial time body, causal body, and it grows them in order. Within the time and energy allotted, we have to maximize our intellectual capacity in order to be able to comprehend the universe, to eventually basically program or deprogram or reprogram the universe with our mind, and then use that to rearrange enough to basically enable some kind of eternal merging. We're basically in an eternal recurrence system. So everything happens forever. We have to perform a kind of mental, physical, intellectual action. I guess there's an emotional process that if you go through emotional learning and development through life, having a family through childhood and making a family and so on, you're going somewhere mentally, emotionally, even if we're not talking about the places that you're going physically. So we have to get to a point in this world and do something with the opportunities that we have to make something of value within the circumstances, whose circumstances are also viable in the rest of the universe. We have to make a mind here, and in a way a mind map that's capable of interacting with the rest of existence, the rest of the multiverse, the rest of time, the rest of space, the rest of consciousness. Otherwise, there won't be a continuity. In the same sense, the other aspect of gaining intellectual capacity to become aware enough of the universe and kind of reprogram it for our own purposes is that we have to gain in that system also by going or achieving something or growing in a way mentally, emotionally. And we have to do it in a way that the universe, the entropy of the universe, as if it's like a parachute opening or something, or an umbrella or a jellyfish. And we have, when the jellyfish goes up to flap the wings, quote unquote, right at that motion or right before they do, we have to be prepared to float upwards and rise up to the highest point of our personal opportunity, rise to the, not occasion, but rise to our highest consciousness. And if we wait until we see the bubbles and the jellyfish arm thing going up and coming down, by the time we actually do it, we'll be out of sync with the universe. And it will be going down and we'll be popping up. We'll just be doing this oscillatory thing, which is ultimately entropy in that it's not sustainable. And so in a way, I guess we have to get in sync. But it's also generating our own time code, our own synchronized, synchronic, encrypted, universally recognizable, but only subjectively available time code of experience that allows you to remember yourself and encode your information in a certain way. And that information can also be shared when it's completed in a certain way, when it's connected maybe to a certain format in a certain system. Like say, it's like a blockchain of not mysteries, but learning about the universe and about everyone, which kind of starts in understanding what happened in society, the controlling systems and spiritual systems and so on, and history, all the way up to what we are, because that's part of the awakening is history, the definition of human, how, the technology with biotechnology changes the definition of human. Technically, if somebody has Neuralink, they're a transhuman. The chip for opening doors and stuff is technically not totally any more transhuman than having an iPhone or something. But as soon as you're changing the way you experience reality, not just society, and adding a filter between you and the world or some sort of processing system, it's not classified as human, and so it's a completely different system. And so the timing thing is also related to entropy in the sense that we have to do all of that before the universe doesn't forget, but it's just there's a phase where everything is in activity or interconnectivity and everything's in motion. And we have to do it when the spirit says so. The mind won't know. And if the mind is watching like the flapping of the wings or the jellyfish skirt or whatever, it's like it's plugged into something that's the frame rate of the TV is slightly different than what it normally is or something, and it's offset, and it'll always be destined to not meet up properly. And in other words, it's like looking at the stars, or as it is explained, looking at the stars, that will always be in the past if we use our mind. If we try and go on that instinct, it'll always be 1 second delay, and so we can't capture the universe. We can't seize the opportunity. We can't actually engage. And so there's this process, and the point of it is that in having a body and seeing all this and waking up, that we not only have to complete the process of waking up, but that we have to get far enough to conclude that we're not actually in control in the first place, and go all the way through the layers that our mind is basically being created as this, not, it's like an extension of the soul or something, but where it interacts with and is referenced by this world, it seems like an illusion. Like it's not looking at us. Like it's overlaid. Like two prisms are overlaid, and when you look the right way, you see the spirit, soul, mind, and when you look the other way or a different way, you see an ego mind, which is basically the shadow of the real mind, but different, where it could be a shadow that's kind of only available in this place. And so basically that mind, that shadow, that entropy, it's psychologically, just like we go somewhere psychologically by developing and having a family and making our own and so on, and going through, the lessons of ourselves. We have to achieve that and do that in a way that creates a kind of mental, emotional, physical, temporospatial time body, causal body, and it grows them in order, in proportionality, like kind of the Mandelbrot fractals, but like the like the Buddha cascade background, like flame artistic rendering, where there's multiple layers of the Mandelbrot fractal of different like colors or gradients, mind, body, and emotionality or soul activation, depending on how we're gonna imagine it. And if they're done out of order, or if one is delayed, or if they're drawn out in different ways, basically not fully completed and so on, the bodies aren't going to actually form. And so fully forming that is in part unlocking the compassion within the DNA from ancestral knowledge, basically what we've gone through. If you knew what you've gone through and what your bloodline has gone through to get here, then this is a form of paradise. And if you knew that, it changes everything. And so that's in part what has to happen in order to liberate the mind, to get there in the first place and perform the kind of action. It's also like saying we're remembering, where we have a certain amount of time to remember, and it's kind of like our true self, and if we don't, it's going to get eaten by darkness or entropy or whatever you want to call it, the boogie concept, the adversary, excuse me. And in reality, it's just a way of describing a fairly complex spiritual scientific concept, excuse me. And that's just entropy in consciousness. So if we were like much lower to the starting point, or the floor of hyperspace, which nothing technically, if anything exists on the floor or touches it, it melts into infinity. So there is no actual floor, it's entropy. But the closer to like the imaginary starting point, which apparently that might be functionally in some ways better, maybe theoretically, if we had to start over in like the 1600s or something, instead of at whatever 0 year is, because 0 year isn't really 0 year because people weren't there. So we technically aren't starting over from 0 year, even with this concept of starting over. But basically, if we're growing something so complex like these Mandelbrot energetic body advancements, if we mess it up, it's like a several story cake or something. If we mess it up, it could collapse in on itself, and then it just is ruined. It's not like if we mess it up because it's so delicate, there's so much going on, there's these layers of complexity that take so long to do, we can just start over or something like that, or just like lob off the top half of it and mush it all over and then just start over on there. There's really no checkpoint. We made for some, this is like our boss round or something. And either that, or we just made one so hard that it would be this, but this is what it is when you want boss rounds, or when you want to get to the next level. We make it so incredibly hard, it's almost impossible, and then we do it. And so if we don't get this, it's like going all the way back to year zero, thousands and thousands of years, to the point where it's almost not even like reasonable, which is part of the game, because then it wouldn't be reasonable to do this. But then the benefit, which is imaginary, is the fact that we did it, which means who we are over that time, which is there's more of it, the time, because it was such a struggle, and there was more of us because there was, so many times, there's more of us then. It's like there's more of a reward. There's more work. There's more yielding in the soul information. And so there might be just enough here that we never have to do it again. For as long as humanity lives, that's the last dip into chaos, to unregulated chaos, that we ever have to experience again, in order to also yield this high technology, because the chaos that was done yielded very high advancement very fast. And if we didn't have that like adversary kind of stuff, which is, however, nothing's really excused in that sense. We all have to be accountable for everything. And it was functional to develop certain things, spiritually advancing people. And if we get to this point, then and we get past it, we don't ever have to do that again. And there's no going backwards. So it's like, this is the point of all points that we want to get to, that we want to achieve. And there is a lot of trickery, however, though, in that this is basically like a paradise. And if we destroy it, it's impossible to replace in the exact same way. And that in itself is also about this kind of quote unquote enlightenment thing, where we have to get past the barrier of low consciousness in order to be able to stabilize. And we have to do it on our own. And we have to do it basically like dry and with no like safety, or we have to at least believe that's what we're doing for our mind. And then it can be used with technology because we know that we did it without it. And we're not just going to get sucked into a runaway technological situation. At least that's the idea. Within the time and energy allotted, we have to maximize our intellectual capacity in order to be able to comprehend the universe, to eventually basically program or deprogram or reprogram the universe with our mind, and then use that to rearrange enough to basically enable some kind of eternal merging. We're basically in an eternal recurrence system. So everything happens forever. We have to perform a kind of mental, physical, intellectual action. I guess there's an emotional process that if you go through emotional learning and development through life, having a family through childhood and making a family and so on, you're going somewhere mentally, emotionally, even if we're not talking about the places that you're going physically. So we have to get to a point.
The human is the prime mover of reality. And maybe I should say the dreaming human is the prime mover of reality. When you digest food, you are cross-correlating, weaving, and stitching different aspects of this physical reality and the etheric reality together in a way that can't be repeated twice, and incorporates both into a cognitive function of the universe. Everything about the human, about this reality, is something that mobilizes and creates, synthesizes something new, something conscious out of multiple aspects of the organic and the inorganic nature of physicality and mentalism, or the mental universe. Everyone knows this. Everyone knows these things, the nature of reality. You are either listening to yourself and these natures, these streams of data, information, or you're paying attention to something else. And in that, you're just like a computer system. You're overriding what is there to be seen, what is there to be recorded. In the system that you're either overriding or exalting and incorporating is done so there is no forever, but forever. It is happening, and what you have done, what you have become, what you are, what you experience, is in a way and directly through you recorded as a molecular history book, an artifact in time, a historic artifact of recording that is pertinent, meaningful, that tells the time that you're in, that you come from, and that you're going to for as long as there is time, as long as there is a universe. It is a conscious clock of meaning that is meaningful as long as there is meaning. And it's everything that you do that incorporates mind, physicality, change, and intention. Everything the human does that incorporates these things is constructing a historic, universal monument that gives reference, that gives temporal, intentional reference in a molecular, physical, conscious map, a time map, that is meaningful and referenced, or is referential, for as long as there is time. It is a historic monument that functions as a time map for the entire universe. For you. But it can be read, however, but it is most meaningful to you because it's your intentions. If your intentions become that which is readily meaningful to all, then you become a monument to all that anything can find meaning through, just by being, just by choosing what you digest mentally, physically, intentionally, and what that produces through you as consciousness, as your conscious experience. The nature of conscious experience, simply experiencing, is just as important on a day-to-day basis, on an unconscious or sublime, regular, consistent level as performing some kind of transcendent awakening course or a retreat at some of these places that you may have seen. Simply being is just as important as walking through the portal of all of time. The whole universe is involved in this. All the animals, all the plants, all the chemicals, all the aspects of nature and physics. It is a time clock, like I've said before, a space-time clock. And every hand, every number, every smaller notch for the minutes and for the seconds in between is a vivid, wakeful aspect of the universe that is constantly, collectively communicating, speaking, singing their universal gospel, which is a multi-universal map of time and being. There is no latent, well, maybe latent, but there's nothing left out. If it's here, it's part of that system, and you can also use it as such. However, you don't need to go and find the screws in the back of the clock and fiddle with those to see what's going to happen. That may or may not be correlated with some of the aspects of the occult and so on, where they attempt to pull from everything, and you'll get things that may or may not be ready or worthy of being discussed in all or various aspects. The center, literally, your digestive tract, the center, what you do, how you sit, where and how you walk, the primary core muscles that you use, the amount of water that you have flowing through your system, the chemicals in your digestive system, all these things are the center of the universe, of meaning, of time, of change, of your own conscious experience. They are all important, but that which is in the center of you, metaphysically, physically, and intentionally, drives the change of the universe and your change and your mind. The universe of change that you go through, that you incorporate in time. It does not have to be what you do in the middle of the day at university or your career. When you wake up, what you're doing in the middle of the night, and the body parts, the organ system, the fluids and humors, and that which is within you is the hydrodynamic, multidimensional molecular fluid that drives the universe. You don't have to do anything special to get access to that. You're already doing it. All you have to do is see that you're doing it. And if you so choose to interact in a way that not only brings clarity, but chooses to emphasize or chooses to focus and isolate, like you're extracting juice or you're clarifying butter, to isolate the meaning in your mind and your life through those features of reality, the center of you, the center of what you eat, the center of what you experience, the center of change, or what we call time, in a way that incorporates that which is influencing the universe in many other ways, instead of just what you see on the outside, what you're told to follow, what you're led and taught is the important thing in life, and so on. If you're looking at the outside only, if you're looking at the ends of reality, certain hours of the day, if you're looking at just the requirements of physicality, finance, attention in certain forms, socialism in certain forms, you may be overwriting that which is at the center of your time journal, your multidimensional historic monument of the universe. You're writing on the clock notions and colors from the newspaper or a primetime series, rather than the hours of the universe that will tell you where, when, and how you are, and what to do next. Or why to do next, not necessarily what. You might know that by not knowing that, by not choosing. And in that way, as well, there may be colors that belong on the clock. It may not be the hours of time, but it may be a alphanumeric, geometric color spectrum of time and consciousness, rather than just bland numbers like a newspaper. We are either listening to that which we are connected to in that form, or we are overriding it. Not necessarily ignoring it. You could be listening very, very intently. But if you are overriding it with other aspects, if you are looking at the underside, back corner, the toes of this historic reality monument, you're not looking at the center, unless you're doing some form of phrenology and so on. There's always a recursive feedback loop of meaning which will re-engage in the core of all things. But again, if you're not aware of the knowledge that is required to look at the underside or the meridians or the teeth or the fingernails or whatever it is to find the core of health, if you're looking at the tennis shoes, the hairstyle, and so on, you may be overriding what is actually there to be seen. And it is possible to still see reality through this over-revision of what is. But the more work one has to do to look away, the more work the universe will become to maintain that, and the more it will also seep and, in a way, informationally crawl back into your vision, and in a way disrupt what you're looking at or are attempting to look at. The more you attempt to overwrite what is there, the more that will be overwritten by what is. So if you make or allow or choose that which you are aware of in a way that reflects all that is, instead of a battle of over-revision, instead of going against the will of the universe to find your will and creating this battle of tidal forces, the forces exalt your will and move in line with what you experience. And it's possible to get swept away with this, to become totally nested, totally involved, and relaxed or almost dissolved into the background vibratory fields, perceptual fields of the universe, like a Zen master in nature becoming part of the background noise and sounds of the environment, and their consciousness becomes one with the ebbing and flowing of the sounds of the birds and the wind in the trees and so on. It is possible to lose yourself of reality to reality. So there is a notion to leave a trail of cognitive breadcrumbs back to this reality by, instead of falling backwards in a sweeping motion into the vines and the thicket and the chirping of the crickets and the sounds that surround you, but to more slowly edge yourself backwards, paying attention to where you're coming from, and consciously moving in a way that retracts from that which you were into the all, so that you have a visible cognitive pathway back into the same location. That may be the point of all of this, because we may always be coming and going in a way that is nearly indecipherable unless you can measure the tens of thousands of data points that map out consciousness and time, like a huge supercomputer system designed to do that. Instead of requiring one of those computer systems, you can use time and consciousness as a map, and you can use your emotions as a geometric pattern to organize through this construct to give yourself a clear, distinct doorway of meaning through a pathway that you can return and come through cognitively, making changes, doing things that are supposed to bring a spiritual impact, that are supposed to change things, that are supposed to take you places. Doing it without creating this pathway in mind, leading to and from the ends and the center of the universe, is the coming and going without knowing how you got here, without knowing where you're coming from and which aspect of the universe you're entering through. It's like slipping out of the sides versus going straight up the pyramid. If you go straight through the center of the gem of the universe, you see everything on the way in and on the way out, which is, it's on the way out and the one on the way in, it's backwards. If you slip through the membrane on the sides, it may be the same as slipping through 3 o'clock or 9 o'clock. If you go through 12, it is maybe like moving through the center, and you can see all of the hours at once, and you know where you are, where you've been, and where you're going. And each moment may transition from one to the next in this format, like a fractal that you open and close with meaning and intention in reference to every other possible intention that you center through yourself and yourself in the universe through that. Every single possible moment, because that's what possibility means. That if it's there, you can make it so with anything that you do. You're getting a change out of it. You're reaping the benefits, or you're experiencing an overwrite, a generation of decoherence. Who you are when you're dreaming is who you are to the whole of reality. Who you are when you're awake, if you're not aware of who you are when you're dreaming, is one chapter of the book, or is 1 hour of the clock. What is spiritual or spirituality is that which pertains to the rest of the universe. What we're taught that is what you receive when you seek that through material means is a pseudological overlay, either meant to deceive or meant to act as an external membrane which will protect and shield or screen out that which is not meant to be on the inside. And it is entirely limited to the degree of being possibly 100% unrelated, and that you can follow it for all of time and it will never make sense as far as what the truth actually is, what the truth means. Actual may not be the correct term. There may be reference to the truth, feel, good, love, balance, and so on. But that is like saying that putting on shoes and walking forward is the nature of marathon running. It's not a lie, but it is not the truth, or it's not the whole truth. And if you go into such experiences or such a challenge or a task with just that in mind, you will be very easily overwhelmed. And maybe that is the point of having such a limited scope through what is essentially a membrane on the outside of the true depth of knowledge. That which pertains to spirituality is that which pertains to, references the spirits, spiritual forces. These can rip one limb from limb or exalt one to and through the center eyepiece of the universe, of the viewing verse, of the looking glass. The people capable of interacting in such ways will push your concept of what it is to be human, what it is to be balanced, what it is to be mortal, in ways that can only reflect supervillains, superheroes, or that which is on the far ends of the scope of reality. That which exists below the scope of those far end limits of what is and what can be is still within the realm of the mundane and does not contain enough motive force to mobilize or push the true navigators or drivers of change in the universe or the multiverse from that perspective. Everything else is just sitting and watching and is not actually engaging or changing. There is nothing to change but maybe one's self, and maybe in that sense by not changing in the height of the tidal storm. But that which is below those levels looks out and claims to have that change, to have that mobility force, but is more or less just pretending. In other words, you have to go beyond your wildest version of yourself in order to actually receive the truth. Otherwise, there is nothing there to act as a catalyst vehicle catalytic vehicle to bring that truth through the medium of reality, of consciousness, down through the dimensional gradient into your world. And dreams act as that medium. They are one of the primary movers of reality. And they may actually be reality. This may be unreality. This may be illusion. What you're experiencing now, what you're experiencing in wakeful reality, may be the dream. The spiritual forces, the awareness, and what we would term as the entities that exist through the dream reality may be weaving change, motive force through consciousness, through what you term or perceive as you, into this world, into this reality. And that may be the underlying cause of events and experience here. What you experience as dreaming may be the reality, and what you experience as wakefulness may be the extension, the result of the painting on the canvas by the dreams and by those in the dreaming reality. In that way, it is backwards. That which you are experiencing now is a result of the dream, and you are the dreamer, or you are the result of the dreamer, and that which you experience in the dreams are the true cause and core of reality. And if that is too much, then that acts as a conscious informational membrane, really a superconscious membrane, because you have to go beyond yourself to attain that, literally beyond the conscious state of waking reality. And it will protect itself. It will ensure that only those who are willing to go beyond the self will have access to the truth, or the true self, just like the membrane of a cell. And those we perceive as being spiritual, you know the kind, may be those that are the most devoid of true spiritual intent, which is something beyond. It's not here, and I put lotion, and there's incense in the air, and the room is lit nice, and there's music. Well, that's here. That's all that is related to here. And that which is truly spiritual, you might say, is the spooky, crazy, impossible to believe, so on and so forth, the monstrous aspect of humanity, which does not fit within your perception of how things are here. It does not fit, they do not fit inside of your perception of what is. Not that it is and they are that which is nice and relaxing, but that it is the opposite, and it is that which frightens you and shakes you through to the core of what you know and what you can experience in this reality, that pushes you into that which is beyond, in a until you're honest with yourself about this process, in a very, very uncomfortable way, in a way that shakes every aspect of your understanding of the world, of yourself. That may be what we call spirituality, which is it has more in common with a train crash than it does what you get if you type in spirituality onto a search engine. Just as you have to walk backwards or edge backwards, seeing the path and moving in a way that is based off of what you're subtracting from the path to bring you to where you will be when you're on the outside of this reality, in order to make your pathway in and out of the looking piece, the eye hole of the universe, the fractal gem of reality, and that it is the opposite of walking forward, if you will. What we know when we know what is here is the opposite of what is reality. It is connected perfectly, symmetrically, like a handprint or a face print in the woven mosaic of consciousness. It is an outline of exactly that which is, but it is the impression of it. It is the space that is left behind when you remove that which is you from that which is. And you see this space there of that which isn't. That is what we know when we're here. And I don't mean that it is all something that negates or causes that clashing of that which is and that which isn't. It does induce a ripple in the membrane of the pseudo nature, like it challenges your pseudo name. It is not all that, or all entirely that. It is that which incurs the dynamic of the dreaming reality that we can't see being or becoming the motivating force or forces behind the waking reality that we can see. It is everything to do with that which isn't turning out to be that which actually is, and that which actually is turning out or being that which is a result of the dreaming of that which actually is, which we perceive now as that which cannot actually be. So it is a challenge to the conscious mind, rather than that which makes it easier to experience the conscious mind, that which is more comfortable to the conscious mind. If we're going to look at that as a baseline, then it is level 1 or possibly level 0, which would be 0.001 or something that measures on a scale but is too small to be comparable to that which is at the higher levels, and doesn't really reflect or indicate that which is occurring on the higher levels. In that way, spirituality, change, true self, knowledge, may be based in exactly that which you do not want to know, that which challenges yourself, rather than that which conforms to that which you want to know, or that which you feel defines the self that is already there. Maybe exactly that which works to undefine that which is there, or define that which is there as something else. Always in a revelatory nature, in that nothing is changing but your perception, and what is being revealed as that which you didn't expect, and what you thought is revealed as an illusion based upon that which you didn't expect. Ferris wheel versus, well, they're both Ferris wheels. A Ferris wheel versus a plane. If you're in a virtual plane,